A Rose for Emily is a story of a woman who was so scared of losing a loved one that she did the unthinkable. For many of us, that's a big fear in our life, is to lose someone that we loved. And most of us would do pretty much anything to keep them. But in this story, did Miss Emily go too far? This is a section of A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner. When Miss Emily Gearson died, our whole town went to her funeral. The men, though a sort of respectful affection for a fallen monument, the women mostly out of curiosity, to see the inside of her house, which no one, save an old servant man, a combined gardener and cook, had seen in the last 10 years. When her father died, it got about that the house was all that was left to her, and in a way, people were glad. At last, they could pity Miss Emily. Being left alone and a pauper, she had become humanized. She too would know the old thrill and old despair of a penny more or a penny less. The day after his death, all the ladies prepared to call at the house and offer condolence and aid. As is our custom, Miss Emily met them at the door, dressed as usual with no trace of grief on her face. She told them that her father was not dead. She did that for 3 days, with the ministers calling on her and the doctors trying to persuade her to let them dispose of the body. Just as they were about to resort to law and force, she broke down and they buried her father quickly. We did not say she was crazy then. We believed she had to do that. We remembered all the young men her father had driven away, and we knew that with nothing left, she would have to cling to that which had robbed her, as people will. The town had just let the contracts for paving the sidewalks, and in the summer after her father's death, they began the work. The construction company came with riggers and mules and machinery and a foreman named Homer Barron, a Yankee, a big, dark, ruddy man, with a big voice and eyes lighter than his face. The little boys would follow in groups to hear him cuss the riggers, and the riggers singing in time to the rise and fall of picks. Pretty soon, he knew everybody in town. Whenever you heard a lot of laughing anywhere about the square, Homer Barron would be in the center of the group. Presently, we began to see him and Miss Emily on Sunday afternoons driving in the yellow-wheeled buggy and the matched team of bays from the livery stable. "I want some poison," she said to the druggist. She was over 30 then. Still a slight woman, though thinner than usual, with cold, haughty black eyes and a face the flesh of which was stained across the temples and about the eye sockets, as you would imagine a lighthouse keeper's face ought to look. "I want some poison," she said. "Yes, Miss Emily. What kind? For rats and such? I want the best you have. I don't care what kind." The druggist named several. "They'll kill anything up to an elephant. But what you want is arsenic," Miss Emily said. "Is that a good one?" "Is arsenic? Yes, ma'am. But what you want?" "I want arsenic." The druggist looked down at her. She looked back at him, erect, her face like a strained flag. "Well, of course," said the druggist, "if that's what you want. But the law requires you to tell me what you're going to use it for." Miss Emily just stared at him, her head tilted back in order to look him eye for eye, until he looked away and went and got the arsenic and wrapped it up. So the next day we all said, "She will kill herself," and we said it would be the best thing. When she had first begun to be seen with Homer Barron, we had said, she will marry him. Then we said, she'll persuade him yet, because Homer himself had remarked, he liked men, and it was known that he drank with the younger men, that he was not marrying a man. Later we said, poor Emily. As they passed the Sunday afternoon in the glittering buggy, Miss Emily had her head high, and Homer Barron with his hat cocked and a cigar in his teeth, reins and whips and a yellow glove. We learned that Miss Emily had been to the jeweler's and ordered a man's toilet set in silver, with the letters HB on each piece. 2 days later, we learned that she had bought a complete outfit of men's clothing, including a nightshirt, and we said, "They're married." We were really glad. So we were not surprised when Homer Barron, the streets had been finished for some time since, was gone. We were a little disappointed that there was not a public showing off, but we believed he had gone on to prepare for Miss Emily's coming. Sure enough, after another week, they departed. And, as we had expected all along, within 3 days, Homer Barron was back in town. And that was the last we saw of Homer Barron and of Miss Emily for some time. When we next saw Miss Emily, she had grown fat and her hair was turning gray. During the next few years, it grew grayer and grayer until it attained an even salt and pepper iron gray when it ceased turning. And so she died, fell ill in the house with the dust and shadows, with only a doddering man to wait on her. We did not even know she was sick. They held the funeral on the second day, with the town coming to look at Miss Emily beneath a mass of flowers. Already we knew that there was one room in the region above the stairs which no one had seen in 40 years, and which would have to be forced. They waited until Miss Emily was decently in the ground before they opened it. The violence of breaking down the door seemed to fill this room with pervading dust. A thin, acrid pall of the tomb seemed to lie everywhere upon this room, decked and furnished as for a bridal, upon the valance curtains of faded rose color, upon the rose-shaded lights, upon the dressing table, upon the delicate array of crystal, and the man's toilet things backed with tarnished silver so tarnished that the monogram was obscured. Among them lay a collar and a tie, as if they had just been removed, which, lifted, left upon a surface pale crescent in the dust. Upon a chair hung the suit, carefully folded, beneath it 2 mute shoes and discarded socks. The man himself lay in the bed. For a long while we just stood there, looking down at the profound and fleshless grin. The body had once apparently lain in the attitude of an embrace, but now the long sleep that outlasts love, that conquers even the grimace of love, had taken him. What was left of him, rotted beneath what was left of the nightshirt, had become inextricable from the bed in which he lay, and upon him, and upon the bedside beside him, lay that even coating of the patient and biting dust. Then we noticed in the second pillow was the indentation of a head. One of us lifted something from it and leaned forward. That faint and invisible dust, dry and acrid in the nostrils, we saw a long strand of iron gray hair.